good excuse, except that it was just a really good sunrise. Like I don't get to see sunrise that much anymore. It used to be my pattern in the morning before these sessions was I would get up and I'd always be up at sunrise and have my tea with a little toast, sitting watching the sunrise.
So you're telling me that there is a sun above the clouds?
The sun was, I mean, it's just, I'll try to post a photo somewhere, but it was just, it's amazing. It's huge sets of clouds. I have I can see a pretty wide range from my deck. And so it just was all the way across the sky. It was amazing. So I had to take some HDR photos of it and HDR video of it so that I could test it in Resolve. So that's my technical excuse, for stopping and looking at the sunrise. So anyway, so let's see here. Let's get this in bed going here.
My one glimmer of hope is every day the sun shows up.
Yeah. There's a song about that, I think.
I'll take it.
All right. Hey, everybody, welcome to Office Hours. If you are here watching on YouTube, you can see a link down below that'll get you to Zoom, which is where the conversation is actually occurring. If you are an attendee and you see all these people out here and ready to answer questions or at least discuss them, and you're wondering, how do I become a part of that? Well, you can. We open the doors at 6. We're starting to open them a little early, but at least by 6. And so so by 6 we'll have them opened. You can at the beginning between 6 and 6:30. We're having tea and coffee. People are bringing in their rigs, and we're testing rigs and seeing how they look and how they sound. And we're talking about all sorts of things, not always technical. And so it's kind of a come as, we're just warning you that don't expect a tight show between 6 and 6:30. At 6:40, we have the mic checks. Once we do the mic checks, we're going to close up the space. If you want to be on the panel, and we would love to have you, you want to be here by 6:40 in the morning. We will also distribute the Discord link then. That's when you can actually join Discord. It doesn't last very long, so if you saw the Discord link go by this morning, you should sign up now. And then at 7 o'clock, we open up the general discussion. So 7 to 8 every day, 7 days a week is general discussion. So we talk about whatever you bring up. So those questions that you throw in there, the ones that you vote on, that's what we're going to talk about today. That is the outline. That is the agenda. So really your duty as an attendee is to think about those questions between shows and bring them up so that we have a way to discuss them. So we then on the second hour have something specific. Today we're going to talk about building remote kits and talk about what's important in those remote kits. We build a lot of them, and I think some people here build some. So we're going to talk about that and answer your questions related to that. Tomorrow is always, Saturdays are always education. So the second hour is all about just the challenges that a lot of educators, whether it's e-learning or K through 12, are having, with in the current situation. Sundays are generally wide open. We just talk about whatever. Mondays are kind of there's always a second, not always, but generally a second hour, but it's a wild card. We don't have anything specific. Tuesdays are audio, Wednesdays are video, and Thursdays typically are guests, but we've been kind of bouncing around a little bit lately. But we'll kind of go back to artists by the end of the year, where we bring in artists just to talk about those things. So anyway, that's kind of how the whole thing runs. If you want to share this, if you think that this is something that you have other people that that would be interested, don't share your own link that you use there. Share the one that I just put in Makana. That's the right link to share. And Guide, it looks like we have a couple questions rolling in. And by the way, if you have questions about remote rigs, just do remote : so that we know to leave it in the second hour. So remote : if you have questions about remote rigs, but otherwise just throw the questions in. Go ahead, Guy.
All right. First one out the gate is from Phil in New York. For anyone who has made the switch to Big Sur, what is not working yet? Have you found any showstoppers?
Go ahead, Mickey, and then John.
Yeah, just a quick thing. You want to hand over the con?
Yep. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead, John.
I installed Big Sur on my backup machine right at WWDC. I've got DaVinci running on it. I've got all of Creative Suite running on it. I haven't had any issues with that machine. There was a huge debacle yesterday, however, but it seems like they cleaned it up. I'm going to upgrade my production machine.
What was the debacle?
They had several outages yesterday, and it looks like they couldn't handle the traffic.
Yeah, they had a lot of
card services was down. Apple Pay was down. It looks like they just got crushed.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of excitement. I think maybe it's excitement after the new hardware announcements. I think that a lot of us got surprised at the performance numbers that were coming out. And what was funny was, I think we talked about this yesterday, Apple kind of buried the lead. They didn't put out their own performance numbers. They let Geekbench and all, they let other people, and Verge and everything else go, hey, look at what we found. That the low end Macs, the last time I've seen this happen was when the G3 laptops came out, where the G3s had these larger L2 caches, and suddenly the laptops were faster than the desktops. There was that one moment where that happened, and I think we're seeing that moment right now where they've made a huge architectural change, and it's much faster than I said I wasn't on Twitter. I said I wasn't going to buy one, but I think I might. I'm just trying to decide. I kind of want to test it. I'm like the performance numbers are so high that I was like, and I'm thinking of getting some Mac Minis, to kind of run this show. And so I was thinking that Mac Minis might be the thing that I experiment with. Go ahead, Peter.
I have Pro Tools First, which came with some hardware that I purchased that has not worked on any of the Big Sur betas, developer betas. I also have a USB 3 to Ethernet J5 Create adapter, which doesn't work, and the website for the driver says so, and they will be releasing a new version for that.
I've had a lot of problems with USB to Ethernet in general with the Mac. Like if they're some off-brand, I've definitely had, where they just don't work. Like and I don't know exactly what's happening, but I know that generally I've gone back to only using the Apple dedicated Ethernet adapters, because all the other ones seem to be, I don't know if it's going to work or not.
Yeah, I think it's the way that they've changed how the kernel extensions work under Big Sur. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. Next question.
Next question is from Tim Erskine in Cupertino, California. Has anyone used Dante Virtual Sound Card with DaVinci Resolve for 5.1 monitoring?
Ooh. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I haven't tried that with the Resolve specifically, but I don't see why it wouldn't work.
Oh, yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, we'll test it soon. We have a pretty big Dante chain in our system. I have what I'm working on right now, just HDMI out with the Ultra Studio. I think the Mini Ultra Studio, I think is the one that I'm for, Mini 4K Ultra Studio. So, and that seems to be working. So, but yeah, Dante. We'll test that. Next question.
Next question is from Daniel Goldstein in Washington, D.C. Question for dealing with people as much as with tech. What's best practices for making sure a remote guest on a live stream has a sufficient signal to noise ratio in their audio signal? Is there a measurement quantifiable number to show them your room tone is too loud?
Well, the main thing that we do is send the mics. Like we don't really, and I will admit that we've taken kind of you don't have to take as hard a line as we have, but if they won't let us send a kit, and that kit is is what we're going to talk about in the second hour, but a camera and an earpiece and a headset and a light and everything else, we don't want to do the project, because to us, it means that they're not going to be serious about everything. And so, but minimum, if you're going to have a key person, I would recommend spending $20 or $25 on a mic system, Pulson, which some folks here have with a little Tech Rise or something like that, where you're spending $20 to $30 on it. It dramatically changes the remote. So much so that if they're not going to, if you're not going to do that, or they're not going to do it, you're just going to have to know that it's going to be rough, like it's, and you chose that. With your project, like you chose not to do that, and you might choose that because you don't have the money, or it's coming up really quick or whatever. But I don't know if measurement will help you in that sense, because there's not a lot to fix. So measurement only helps if you have a tool to actually align the measurement with your output. And so, I don't think there's any way to measure it as much as there is you can move people around so that they're not looking straight at a wall that has a wall right behind them, those kinds of things. Go ahead, Hasma.
Yeah, I mentioned yesterday about doing this meeting for doctors preparing for exams. I just had a meeting with the faculty this afternoon, and they said there were about 130 participants. So I said, well, we're going to have to check everyone for their camera and for their audio a week or two before the meeting. And I think they almost fell off the floor saying, what do you mean? I said, I mean exactly what I'm saying, because if it's not going to be done, then we're not having this seminar.
Yeah, if they're in webinars and they're not, and this is one of the reasons we use webinars, is so that people can choose. I don't want to have my camera on. I want to just be able to listen to it. I want to be able to watch it in Mukana, which we have here. We have audio streaming so that you can just listen to it if you want. You don't even have to come to Zoom. So there's ways to let people off the hook, but you're definitely right for meetings. Now, what we do is we have two different layers of of that process. So we do for the main speakers, we want to send kits out, and we want to make sure that they're all ready to go. And we spend anywhere from a half an hour to an hour or two on every speaker to tune their quality and make sure that they're doing everything just right, and we're getting the quality out of them. For all the participants that might come in and ask a question, we do what we call a per-seine process. So a per-seine is a fishing term for how you fish tuna in the ocean. What you do is you throw a fad into a fad as a floating attraction device, and it's been around for a couple thousand years. If it turns out in the ocean, if you throw junk into the ocean, I don't mean plastic, but like you just pile up a bunch of boards and everything else, and you just throw them in the water, they'll attract little things, and those attract fish, and then those attract more fish, and before you know it, you've got a 10-foot fad that has 200,000 fish floating around it, because it just becomes a thing. So anyway, that's how when they fish, they run this big net around it and they pull them all in. That's a per-seine fishing process, and so we call it per-seine. A per-seine processing means for us, we're not going to do it the same way that we do it with speakers, because at 150 or 200 people, that's not cost effective. So what we do is we set up windows, and we use a scheduling app. I'll have to find out what it is, but we let people schedule time, 15-minute windows. So we'll have someone there for 4 or 5 hours, and people are just coming in to check their connections, and it's just really quick, like, how's my connection? And we do some triage, do this and move this around, and it'll be a little better here. But we spend a minute or two on each one just to kind of tighten them all up. Now, Blue, who was on our show before, he won't let you come to the webinar without going through his process. And so you have to finish your registration, you have to do that. He's got 5 or 6 people for thousands of people coming through. But if it's only 150, we would have probably 1 or 2 people there for 2 or 3, 4-hour sessions the week before. And there'll be some dead time, and then there's other times. And what you want to do, though, is you want to have people schedule it in to process that. But it really makes a difference, because you get through all these little, and a couple people will take a little bit more time, but it makes, if you're looking for interaction from the audience, the only reason you do that is that you hope that they talk. Then they're part of the show. That's the hard part that people don't get about Zooms and meets and anything else that they do, is that they're like, well, they're just in the audience. Well, they're not just in the audience. They're on stage. Like, everybody's on stage and in the audience all at the same time. And so everybody here, like, even when you're not talking in this panel, it's why a lot of times if I feel like people are distracted, they're talking on another call, they're doing something else, I just dump them out of the system, because they're in front of everybody doing that. It'd be like you taking a call on a when you're on stage, and so that's the reason that you want to tighten it up if you're doing meetings. Anyway, next question.
Next question is from Frank in Ottawa. He says, any interest in having a deals section in Discord?
I'm a little sensitive to the deal thing right now. I think that we organize deals through the group. Like, hey, we've got a big deal that we figured out. And the main thing is that I just don't want it to become a sales thing, a salesy kind of thing. And I'm afraid that if we leave it open, there'll be a temptation to do something that people are trying to get affiliate links, or they're somehow connected to the retailer or whatever. If we do those deals, I can guarantee you we're not going to make any money on them. Like we're going to do a deal where I found a great deal for all of you, or you guys were interested, or someone here brings one to us, and we kind of go through some kind of formal process. But I want it to be, I know I'm being very purist about it, and we could probably make a bunch of money on it, but I just don't want the group to become about that. And so the reason that we don't have a deal section specifically is that in the past, we've had folks try to take advantage of the group not take advantage of them, but leverage that into sales. And, it's just not the environment that I'm interested in. So that's the reason we don't have it. Probably won't do it anytime soon. But if there's deals that someone has, and if I can get deals for folks, like a 30% off or something like that, and I can do it cleanly, then I'm going to do it for the group. So definitely bring me things that you might be interested in, but I think that we'll be pretty careful about how we do that. Next question.
Next question is from Jonas in Reutlingen. Hope I said that somewhere in the right terms. My Dell-XPS 15 has an HDR monitor and is Dolby-vision enabled. Is that good enough to grade/work with HDR or Dolby-vision with Resolve?
I think it's good enough to get started. Whether it's a calibrated system or not, like, could you grade a film on it and release it? Maybe not. But could you build something out and make it look relatively good and take advantage of HDR? If it's actually displaying, if Resolve is actually displaying it on that screen, it depends on whether the screen is really doing that or not for Resolve. And so, but you definitely, if you're doing those grades, you want to have a way to preview it, to do it. And that sounds like it's going the right direction. If you're doing a final grade, I would say that you want a calibrated, and you can use a consumer monitor like an LG OLED, but you need to have somebody come in and really calibrate it. It's not like I can just turn it on and plug it in, and then out of that you need something like an Ultra Studio 4K Mini or something like that to get the content out. But you do need something that is for that. But to get started and to do stuff that's relatively good, remember also, the more you lean on scopes, the better. So you can look at what it looks like, but you want to make sure that you become very technical. When you don't have all that information, you don't have a $30,000 monitor, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means you need to be technical about it. You need to look at the scopes and know what you're looking at all the time so that you can error correct those to get it close. But to do a final wide release HDR, you need to have a relatively good monitor that's calibrated. Sky, and then Jeffrey, and then Mickey.
Just looking up what that model is, and it came up as a laptop. And while the Retina on a Mac laptop has a lot of density, you would always want either scopes.
It's not really density, it's the color. It's just whether it can, I don't know what it does. HDR, does it do 1,000 nits? Is it 1,200 nits? Is it, those are the things, because you're not really looking for density.
15 inches, I mean, you got to be pretty close to a 15 inch to get the perspective.
But as far as color goes, there's no reason why it couldn't do it. It's just a matter of the 15 inch would be plenty size for color. It's just a matter of whether how it's displaying it, and I just don't know enough about that.
And also the room atmosphere that you're in is always going to be a big difference, and that's why it's usually.
You'll notice that every
editors and colorists live in a dark space.
Yeah, dark space. Oftentimes, I pretty much everything's 15% gray. Like when I move into an office, it usually goes, and we will paint it all. And so it's all 15% gray, and then I close all the windows, and I don't have a lot of color in the room, and that tends to be how
give a quick reason why. Because
it's just that the reflected color, you may think of it, that's just a blue room, but that's reflecting blue all over the room. And if the sun comes in, your eyes are adjusting to the sun. If all these things are affecting how you view that image, and so if all that ancillary light is changing the flavor of that to you, and so if you need to be in as neutral a space as possible to to do that. And the only reason I choose, it could be any gray. I choose 18% gray because it's easy to get an 18% gray card. Then you hand it to the painter and just say, I want that. And then they go do it. Jeffrey, and then Mickey.
So Dell has actually, their monitor systems have, especially if you've got a newer Dell, have they call them the award-winning monitor systems. I'm not sure on the laptops as much as their regular monitors, so that might help. But the other question is, can't they get like some sort of monitor, I don't know what they're called, but the little device that you set on top of the monitor to fine-tune the color, or does that not work with Dolby-vision?
Well, number one, I don't think it does. Yeah, Spider. The Spider works with a monitor, and you will get a much more accurate. So for a laptop, you can probably get it calibrated pretty well. The hard part you get into when you try to calibrate a screen, an external screen, is what's the communication. With the laptop, it's a relatively straight, it's a relatively straightforward thing in the laptop because the computer can talk to it at the same time. When you get an external screen, you have to figure out. There are ways to do it, but it's a more complicated thing to calibrate those monitors with a sensor. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're allowed to disclose this, but could you give us an idea of the cost of the vision licensing for Resolve?
I think it's $300. I think it's a $300. I think the Vision licensing I thought was $300.
Okay.
On
Okay,
top
I've,
of
I've,
Resolve.
I've read a lot of varying things on forums, and yeah, I've read people say 300. I've read people say 2,500 a year. So it's quite unclear because
Yeah.
Resolve says contact Dolby for in terms of to get licensing. So
I will do some research on that. My understanding was $300, but I could be wrong. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I was just going to note that yesterday I got a few notices from ATMOS showing that the neon 17-inch monitors that we saw at Cinegear a while back are starting to ship. So these took a while to get to market, but they are. It says nothing about Dolby on here, surprising, but it does say 1,000 nit to 1,500 nit HDR. And this is a pricey monitor. The 17-inch, which is the smallest, is starting at $3,999 for a 17. And then it goes up to 24. So the 17 and the 24 are starting to ship. So for those of you interested in some of the best monitors out there, take a look at these ones.
Is it neon?
ATMOS neon. Yeah, brand new.
That's great.
And bigger sizes are coming from them as well.
Yeah.
Is that an OLED? What is that? Architecture.
I'm not sure what that is.
And do they have built-in recorders? Because it says recording too.
For a field monitor to have that? Ooh.
Well, it is ATMOS, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
All right, next question.
All right, next question is from Sky Gleason. Building a drive-in car. Hold on, let me switch my input back to me. Okay, building a drive-in car, Christmas Eve candlelight service, some budget. What do I need? LED wall, blow-up screen with projectors, FM transmitter.
It's in car.
How many?
People?
How many cars?
To be determined. 50.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the big thing is if you get a quality LED wall, you said some budget. That's all the budget. You know, like a quality LED outdoor LED wall is going to cost real money. And so you may be able to find. I've been pretty successful with. Like, here's the thing: you just got to decide how bright does it really need to be. Is it all in the evening? So it's after dark, right?
That's well, it's Seattle, so anything after 3 o'clock, yeah.
Yeah. So, I would think about the advantage of the blow up screens is that they are a lot less expensive. You just have to think about wind.
Exactly.
So just think about
$229 at Walmart for like an 80.
Well, yeah. I mean, most of my experience has been with ones that when you have 50 cars, you have to think about the size of that screen. You're really talking about a 30-foot screen. That's the size of the screen that's going to be reasonable for that number of cars. When they spread out wide and spread out deep, 30 feet is going to be, that's table stakes. So you got to figure out how you're going to cover 30 feet.
How about multiple screens?
I would recommend you're just going to deal with lots of little screens that people are squinting at. I mean, you're better off if you can to get a full size screen. Then you need the power to light up that screen. So I mean, I'll see if I can find some pictures while Phil talks.
And then also John Iddleston for audio and FM. So Phil.
Yeah, we helped put one together at a local organization here, and we'd gotten some construction scaffolding, which they did about 4 tiers high and about 5 tiers wide. And then we actually got some real projection material that we stretched across that. And then that was sufficed for about 4 cars deep. But we also had to consider wind on that. So you have to cut holes or have a material that has holes in it, believe it or not. And so, you got to be careful about those kinds of things.
And how large was that screen again?
That was about 35 feet high, maybe 50 feet wide, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty big. And, if you want the drive-in experience, you got to have a big screen. Otherwise, no sense having a drive-through.
What was your rear projector on that? Or did you?
We had a Barco, very nice. It was a rental laser projector. It was like, I think we used a 3600 Barco, which is like 8,000 lumens. Is really nice,
And just the price point in Pennsylvania was what?
It was a rental. So
yeah, that's what I mean for a rental.
You know what? That kind of thing is so, it's a commodity. So
Yeah.
you got to find a guy and he's got it sitting around. He make you a deal. So that's all I can advise on that.
Find a guy. That's my job. Hey.
You gotta, find a guy and make a deal. That's the key to the operation there. So
My brother says I don't know a stranger.
let's see here. I'm just trying to find you a
8,000 lumens. So
Yeah, the
like a
46 that we're speccing one right. It's those barcode laser.
Oh, they're great.
Beautiful. They're beautiful and they're sharp. And you push a button and you set them up. But they're like 250 pounds.
They're huge. But have you ever seen a Boeing projector? They're crazy.
Yeah. These things are
Courtney knows.
So the just to kind of give you an idea of scale of just how quickly things escalate. Let's see here. I should have taken better pictures. I regret this anyway. But we share this. So that's a 30-foot screen. That's a 30-foot blow-up screen. And it was 2,000 seats, or 1,500 seats, but it is, but when you talk about 50 cars, you'd be about this distance from that, maybe a little closer, but not much, so this is, that's the internal structure. Hold on. And this is them out, this is this is our kit with a couple barcodes, there. I don't know if I have ones this is back when couldn't really shoot stuff at light. I think I was taking pictures of the up lights that they had there. And this is actually in anchor watt. So this was, but this was two barcodes. There were 25,000 lumens on top of each other, onto the screen in 4K.
Sure. Yeah.
So that looks really good. You will have a hard time getting to that without significant investment in the projectors, but a 25,000 lumens barco will get you pretty far, as far as that goes. Anyway, so
that's helpful.
This is a really good breakfast, by the way.
Very nice.
Best breakfast in Cambodia. All right. Anyway.
Audio.
You said you're in Philadelphia or in Pennsylvania?
No, he's doing it in Seattle, right? You're doing it in Seattle.
Oh, yeah, North Seattle.
Yeah. So audio, John, go ahead.
Or Courtney.
So Sky, where is this going to be held?
Mill Creek, Washington, Christmas Eve, in car, trying to recreate a candlelight service. So possibly coming out with little LED lights. We thought handing people wax candles to light in their car might be a bad idea.
Okay, so what's your feeling about being a pirate?
Oh, I matey. R is my first and only letter.
So the first thing you have to find out, is there a FM frequency there that's not going to step on somebody who's close?
The apartment complex next door?
No. There's a radio station.
Radio station. So what happens is I have a 1 watt transmitter, and I could turn it down, and if you don't have a good antenna, then that limits how much it goes out. But a 1 watt transmitter with a nice FM antenna can go a long, long way. And if you start interfering with somebody else's radio station,
we're in a valley, and I only need to go about 100 feet in all directions.
But telling the radio waves only go 100 feet is a little harder. You can contact FCC and get event transmitters licenses. So if you want to go formal, but it takes a little bit longer. I tend to be a pirate and ask forgiveness, but since this is a church, you may not want to sin.
And you can, if you centered that antenna around the cars, 1 watt would get you to everybody. Like that. 1 watt is enough to do it. You definitely could get to all the cars in 1 watt. 1 watt will go pretty far without line of sight. Like line of sight without any obstructions. 1 watt will take you away, and so you can stay within the legal limit there. Mickey?
Quarter watt can take you 100 feet even. Quarter watt, yeah.
So yes, John, let's talk.
And there's a number of them that are that you get on Amazon, but I've got a pretty good one that has a real good transmitter clean signal, and you just need a line level in, and that's all you need. And it has compression in it also. So It tends to work pretty well. We used it at a number of university events, and
I've heard
we were in
there's
the
a
middle of
thing-
nowhere. Fort Ord is 46 square miles, and since it used to be used as a firing range, we had a lot of space that we could transmit to.
Go ahead, Alex, and then Courtney.
You might want to consider having some radios tuned to the right frequency in case some cars just don't have FM radios anymore. I mean, the car that I drive hasn't had an FM radio for a few years now, so you might need to have some tuned correctly so you can give people a speaker with,
Great.
you know, yeah.
You can
Because
buy.
I don't think we even. I mean, what we're thinking is, as a family, you go up and you want to sing Christmas carols, but you can't get in the sanctuary because then you're spewing, and that's illegal. That's technically illegal in the mandate of the governor. We might be, we might be shutting down again here pretty soon. So
There's something fascinating about running, for me, about running analog mics or like microphones, wireless or analog or whatever, to all the cars and let them all sing inside their cars and then mix it all together.
Ooh.
Anyway, just something to
An old
think
Mackie
about.
mixer sitting over there.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, you've covered most of my points I was going to bring up. Yeah, 8,000 lumens is a little bit low for that size of a screen. You want to get at least 20,000, I'd say. And you want to raise the screen up since people are going to be in their cars. You're going to have vision blocking problems if you're down on the deck. You're going to need to be at least 10 feet in the air for the bottom of the screen. And
wow, 10. Sure.
Well,
okay, got it.
8.
I hear you. I'm
because
there.
if somebody's parked right in front of you, that's
No,
going to include, and the
my high
screen's far
school
away. That
job
could
was
include the whole
as a
screen.
drive-in theater projectionist, so I remember it.
Well, look, that was the other suggestion I was going to make. Are there any drive-ins left in Seattle?
They've all got turned into apartment complexes.
Yeah, that's the problem with real estate.
Yeah,
I think that was you might have some speakers for a PA system.
Yeah.
For those people that don't have radios, they could park up front, and you could use a PA system for those people.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
First of all, to your point about the pirate, it's that some people think it's the R, but everybody knows that a pirate loves the C a lot more. Secondly, with the whole car thing and the RF frequency, why not just do something like have them all sign up to a Zoom type situation and then have the audio from the Zoom from their phones, because they'll have their phones and a lot of them will have car kits. They'll just be able to plug in that way. And the latency will be low.
And
Look,
that.
The latency seems low when you're on Zoom. At 200 milliseconds, it's a long time. 200 milliseconds in a live environment is an eternity.
Well,
remember
and also
Happy
the
Birthday?
content we were discussing last night, it may be just as much as putting words up on a screen and singing hymn and carols, Christmas songs together, because that's the tradition of what we want to be a family. We want to be together. We want to do a thing on an evening that we've always done a thing. But
I do think that the FM will be easier. You'll have a lower technical hurdle and lower latency.
Streaming it anyway, so
I understand, but streaming isn't going to work because that latency is going to be much higher. Even if you put it on ultra low latency, you're talking seconds.
Well,
and then Zoom.
To those that are not there.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. But I'm saying for the people there, you wouldn't want them to look at the stream. And again, 250 milliseconds or 250 milliseconds is nothing for this conversation, but in the room, it's a long time. We spend when we're working on screens, for events, we are gen locking everything and tying everything, referencing everything to make sure that we're talking about less than a frame that we're trying to solve, and so because people notice it pretty quickly, and you're already getting latency from the fact that wherever the speakers are versus where the screen is versus the sound of you're dealing with physics issues. Adding Zoom to it or any kind of other stream will not be great.
Jeffrey, to your point, on our Sunday service, we're anywhere between 7 to 40 seconds latency between.
But if everybody's if everybody's in a car, and it's for some people, I know that's kind of strange to say, but some people don't care if the lips aren't close to what's being said.
They're not. This isn't close.
And they're
this
not.
Is like,
and you're not pushing stuff out. Like for instance, the people in the car, you're not hearing them sing as well. Then this could be a good alternative.
Well, think
it's
the words,
so much
words up on the screen.
I'm just telling you, you're gonna have a whole bunch of people that can't get into Zoom. They're gonna have trouble with it and everything else. FM is the way to do this. Like FM is absolutely the way to do this. Don't get distracted by trying to encode it. It's gonna be, you have a bunch of civilians here. They're not tech people, and they're not gonna be able to get on there phones are not going to be able to get, there's going to be you're going to have this whole host of cavalcades when an FM transmitter takes a little bit of work on your end and then it works.
Done.
You could go buy $3 little receivers that you can buy on Amazon by 50 at a time. And you can just hand them out to anyone who doesn't have it in their car, and they can put them on their headphones. But it's super easy to do this. I've done a lot of FM transmissions all over the world, little ones like this, and it's super simple. It is lo-fi, and it totally works every time if you spend just a little bit of effort in testing doing it. And it's going to be so much easier than trying to get people to use their phones because they're going to have battery issues and they're going to have connection issues. Go ahead, Mickey.
And yeah, like in terms of sync issues, if you're gonna stream it out, you can't solve it on your end because each person receiving it will have different delays.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
FM will be much
Without
lower.
their windows, you'd have a great cacophony.
Yeah, exactly. Cacophony. Okay. All right. Next question. Okay, we're gonna speed up a little bit so we come to you.
Thank you. Thank
we
you all
may cut
again.
people off. Yep.
Thank
absolutely.
you all, and tell me if you're going to try it, Tony. Make it happen.
All right. Next question.
Next question is from Brian Bavito. His question is: has anyone tried Mixtroz, specifically with a Zoom meeting?
Mixtroz. It's new. I will have to do more research, but I have not. I don't think anybody here has seen it. So, what's it? Mixtroz. What's the Troz?
Looks like a virtual conferencing type situation.
All right, we'll take a look at it, but we haven't seen it yet. All right, next question.
Next question: what is the group's preferred UPS manufacturer and type? Triplight, APC, CyberPower, specifically asking about our style of office hour setups with multiple computers and devices.
Our tried and true for most of what we do is APC. Then we have I can't think of the higher end ones. Maybe if Marty is still watching, Marty will remind me of the name of the one that we use in the trailer. But APC for most of our stuff is what we Liebert. Liebert are the ones that we use in our like mission critical stuff. They're anyway, that's another level of expense and reliability. Mickey?
Yeah, I trust APC and CyberPower, although I use APC more because they have a service center relatively close to me here, so that's maybe something to take into consideration. Depending on your area, you might want to see what kind of after sales support you can get.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
I have 3 APCs here. Some of them are 15 years old. And as far as servicing, I go buy the big giant batteries at the battery place and replace them. And they come right back online. I've had very good luck with them.
I'm a big fan of buying ones that are large enough that it's easy to swap the batteries. So you get the 1500 kVA or the 1500 VA ones, and you can pop the battery out of them. And if you're going to fly with them, that's important. But it also just means that you can, when you're not using them, you spin the battery around so that it's out of commission. But also you can easily replace the battery. If you get ones that are a little smaller, you end up with them built in, and when they go bad, they go bad. And so you're better off with a slightly larger one that you can swap the battery. Next question.
Matt asks, we just shot a program in 4K.
Before you get to that, I just want to say that there is nothing better. Like we use a lot of UPSs. And I think at one point I probably had 50 or 60 of them that we would go out in different kits, fly out in kits. And there's nothing better than nothing better as an overall project, but there's nothing that's more satisfying is the house loses power. Like the whole house, we worked in an event in London where the whole house lost power. And everything went down, but all of our screens and our streaming and everything else was still running. it's like, and then the client looks at you and goes, "Oh, they were prepared." And the hard part for everybody else is that nobody else was. Like everybody else's screens are off and ours are still sitting there. And they're like, "What happened to the stream?" And you're like, "The stream's still going. And there's just nothing to stream because all the cameras are out." So anyway, it's definitely worth having UPSs. All right, next question.
No problem. Matt says, we just shot a program in 4K and I am now editing for a 1080p output in Premiere Pro. My Windows PC is starting to bog down when scrubbing, even when monitoring at half quality. It's an i7-8700 at 3.7 gigahertz with 16 gigs of RAM. Should I look at RAM, hard drive speed, processor speed?
Go ahead, Mickey, and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, generally GPU, and depending on what resolution codec you're using, uh, your storage speed as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
So the 8700 is a, let's see, the year is 2017 that one came out. So that the processor is pretty decent. What I would do is, first of all, if you're doing only 1080p, I would take the original files and go into and re-encode them to 1080p. And then when you're in Premiere Pro, create proxies. And that way the proxies will be a lot smaller, and you'll have a better resolution and better movement within Premiere Pro.
And I think you could just create the proxies. I don't think you need to go through the re-encode down to 1080. I think you can just create the proxies out of it. That way you could always go back to 4K. What you don't want to do is give up the 4K. You worked all on that edit, and reconforming it will be a pain. So it's probably better to generate the proxies there to make that work. I think looking at the information there, that your processor is probably fast enough. I would make sure that you have at least an 800 megabit read write, on the drives that you're using, and then 16 gigs of RAM is a little low. You might want to get to 32. Those will be the two things that I'd probably think about when you're dealing with 4K. And typically, most of the drives that I work off of are 1,000 or above. As far as the read write, RAIDs or SSDs or some version of that. Is just keep that data flowing through. The drive is going to be the number one thing that slows you down with footage, and then RAM and then processing. And GPU is the one thing you didn't list there, but the GPU being able to manage that. It depends on, I don't know enough about how Premiere manages its resources to know how that would work. No, next question. Oh, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, it takes advantage of GPU power fairly well.
Yeah, so that might be another thing to look at. Next question.
Next question is from John Prado in Las Vegas. He says, esteemed panel, I'm looking for an app, iOS or Mac, to control my Blackmagic micro camera.
I don't know if there's any app to do it directly.
I searched on Google last night, even to find like a Raspberry Pi. Didn't Nick Justison write an app to control? I don't know what camera he has, though.
Yeah, he has a bunch of micros, but I don't know of any. Yeah, I've not seen anything that talks to the camera directly. Generally, everything's going through, the app would be some kind, having an ATEM and talking to it through the ATEM. That's the only way I've seen them talked to. Oh, look at Scarhoy. So Scarhoy has a shader. Their larger shader is a standalone, and it's using the SDI return to talk to the camera. So their older shader system, not their newer one that talks through the switcher or talks directly, but they have one that'll talk directly to the camera. Unfortunately, it's still expensive. I don't know how much it is, but you're not going to save any money with it. But it is a shading device that should be able to talk to the camera if that's all you're looking for. And price is not an option, not an issue. So, next question.
Next question is from Brett in Kansas City. He asks, what is the group's preferred quick video player that shows technical specs such as frame rate and data rate, audio channels, etc.? Now that QuickTime 7 is no longer available in Catalina or Big Sur, I miss QuickTime 7 as a go-to technical tool. VLC is great, but still shopping.
Sky?
Well, yeah, okay. I was going to go to VLC, but
I would say the free version of Resolve.
Sure.
Can open it up and tell you a lot about the thing. So that's a free app. It works on Mac and PC, and you can get information about your clips. Go ahead, Phil.
An app called Media Info. It tells you all the dirty details on your stuff, and I'll put the link in Mukana.
Perfect. Next question.
Hasmik asks, green room. I have heard this term for Zoom events. What is a green room? Same as waiting room? Letting people into Zoom events and checking their audio and video in a waiting room before joining the event. How is this done if it can?
Go ahead, Sky.
Well, again, the origin is a physical room outside the stage.
And answer real quickly because we're running out of time.
And it was particularly green because it's a calming color. So the phrase is a metaphor for a physical space. Now, what it has become, I will let the other people talk about.
Yeah, so we use green rooms for every show. So, and what that means is that all of our speakers go through the green room before they get to the event. So they go into a green room, and that's usually a separate Zoom meeting. And so that can be and so in that meeting, someone like Shannon or somebody else will sit there and tweak every little bit. And usually we have them come in 20 to 30 minutes before the event, before they're part of the event. So if it's like a 6-hour event, they don't have to be there 20 to 30 minutes before the event. They come whenever they come. And so usually we have someone operating a green room throughout an event. They come into that, they get all tweaked up. We make sure that everything's just right. And then we push them, we give them a link to the real event. Now, of course, what we wished Zoom had was a green room, just a green room that was part of the webinar that you could come into and we could just drag you into the event. So that would be a huge upgrade that would help a lot, because everybody should have it, because the problem is you have a practice area in webinar, but that only happens before, that's assuming that the event is very short. By definition, is you can tweak everybody, sure, but you can't, and you also can't open the event. What we like to do is be able to, you don't want to, if you have a 10 o'clock event, you don't want to open the event at 10 o'clock. You want to open the event at 9:50 or 9:45 or even 9:30. And so that people can get in and you can get things worked out. And, like you have problems with, like we authenticate people and make sure that they're authenticated in Zoom. 10% of the people have, 10 to 15% of people have problems with that. Like they just can't figure it out. So you want to get through all of that early before the speakers that they want to hear are talking. So, but the green room lets us do that. And we use it. We've been using green rooms for a decade, for events, and it changes everything, because then you get through all those troubles and it reduces so much of the errata during the event that it's absolutely worth it. You just have someone dedicated, 1 or 2 people dedicated to taking care of them. Yep. Next question.
All right. On this one, I'm going to cut over to the item that he's talking about and hit answer. Okay. Eric Hall asks, any experience with this HDMI switcher with multiple HDMI inputs from Monoprice? So it looks like a little $30 switcher that's probably going to glitch every time that you switch. So that's the big thing. It's going to not be clean.
Phil and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, I have that on my kids' PlayStation, Xbox, blah, blah, blah. And it's a glitch switch for sure. I wouldn't use it in a broadcast production.
Yep. Jeffrey?
I've used these switches in a broadcast production because I've left switchers at home. And the only way that I would do that is if I had another camera to mask it. So I would switch the other camera. Then I would switch the camera inside there. And then I'd go back to that one. That's probably the best thing. There's definitely going to be a couple second in between, especially if you have different resolution cameras going through.
Next, Jeffrey, and then we'll go and move on.
Follow up from those of you who have it. Does it skip unused inputs, or does it go to an unused input as you're switching? In other words, you have nothing plugged into 2 when you're on number 1. Do you go to a dead input? That was the second part.
It doesn't look that smart to do that.
Yeah, so it just goes to the dead input, I think. Go ahead, Courtney, last one, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, most consumer switchers will do EDID and HDCP negotiation every time you switch. So that's going to take 5 or 6 seconds in black. So unless there are some that have a persistent EDID that will, lock the EDID so it doesn't renegotiate every time you switch. So you can look for that in the instructions. I don't know if this one does or not.
Next question.
Next question, Jason Panks in Nashville asks, is there a way to make eyeglasses not reflective or less so?
There is reflective coating that you can get on your glasses that will reduce the reflection.
Anti-reflective coating.
Anti-reflective coating. Yeah, reflective coating is just called sunglasses. So you get anti-reflective. Yeah, exactly. And then the biggest thing we do is it's angle. Angle of what you're doing is the easiest way to reduce the a lot of times we'll move the glasses a little bit, or we play with the lights so that it's angle of incident equals angle of reflection. So there's this thing that you do with the camera and the lights and figuring out where those highlights are. Usually that highlight position is pretty small, so you just have to find it. But yeah, go ahead, Courtney, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, there are anti-reflective, they're fluoride coatings, but usually they're on the inside of the lens so that you don't see your eyeball reflected back at yourself rather than the front side of the lens. But you can have them done at an optical place if you have them on.
Next question.
Next question is from me to Courtney, because I can see him in 720p and notice this great Macgyver hat that he's wearing. So I'm wondering if there's a story behind that Macgyver hat.
I knew the producer. This is an old school Macgyver hat. This is from the Richard Dean Anderson days. But yeah, I was a friend of the producers. And Got all kinds of swag from the show. So.
That's great. Next question.
But how many things could you fix with one hat?
Yeah, exactly.
Next question.
It fixes my
question is
lack of hair, you know.
Yeah.
All right. Next question is from James in Dublin. Audio chains, they can break your heart. Any tips for managing or mapping out audio chains for multiple guests?
Yeah, go ahead, Nikki.
One thing I would suggest is if you have the budget to, I would standardize on it, like have the guests have the same chains throughout. But if not, a spreadsheet really helps.
Yeah. And I don't know whether this might have been more of a remote question, but we're close to the top of the hour. But standardizing the pipeline makes a massive difference. If you send everybody the same thing, it's easier for your tech support to tell them what to do because they know what they're using. You get a couple people with some wonky connection, and you just can't figure out why it's not working. And then oftentimes, again, we send out questionnaires of like, what are you using right now? Like even if we're going to send them a kit, we still want to know what kind of internet and what their computer is, and what knowing more of that beforehand makes a big difference. Next question. Okay, Mickey, last thing real quick, and then
yeah, just a quick thing to add to that. Like if even if you're sending out kits, like as Alex mentioned, and you still ask what they're currently using, that gives you a sense of their technical capabilities. Like if you're sending them a kit but they are already using a Scorpio, that already means like, okay, they have an idea of how to run the
Scorpio
kit.
My webcam is connected to Scorpio. Next question.
Next question is from Alex Goldner. He says, Apple is giving an update about Final Cut Pro 10.5 at next week's Summit event. If you could ask a question of the Final Cut team that they would answer, what would you ask them?
Are they doing anything to address the anti-aliasing issues on the USDZ display? So when USDZ is rendered, it's rendered at a 1-to-1 pixel ratio, which means that there's aliasing along all the edges for especially long polygons. And I notice it all the time. So all the curves and everything else, there's just a little bit of aliasing that goes on because it's not being oversampled. And just curious if they're going to do something about that. They won't tell us, but I would like to address it in front of a lot of people. So to add some pressure to it getting fixed, because it's not a broadcast tool until then. In my opinion, like you can't use USDZ is good for us playing around. It's good for AR. It's good for education material, but it's not good you can't use it in broadcast until they fix that problem of the aliasing, at least on the final render. Like you can do it in real time. Anyone else? Go ahead, Victor.
Yes. When will you be doing DaVinci Raw as a native format?
We're swinging hard. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and along that same line, when are you going to come out with a cross-platform version?
Oh yeah, that's not going to happen. Cross-platform. It's Intel and Silicon. Apple Silicon. It's officially cross-platform between two. Anyone else with any other comments or questions they'd want to put in front of Apple? Yeah, I think that would be good. I mean, I think that I'm going to be really interested in how many tools they put in to handle vision, vision and ATMOS. Obviously, I believe there's an incredible amount of pressure now that Resolve has all the ATMOS tools. There's a lot of pressure now to solve that problem. Go ahead, Alex, and then Victor.
As regards vision, the version 10.5, which came out last night or yesterday, is able now to get the Dolbyvision metadata included in projects, which is a bit strange,
right.
Which means it'll actually play well on Apple devices. So according to the release notes.
Okay, so the notes are that 10. I haven't seen the update on my computer yet. So 10.5 was released yesterday, and it's got some support materials. Oh, you're muted, Alex.
Sorry, there's 4 features essentially. There's 4 features. There's the Apple Silicon compatibility. There's DNX, different Avid codecs. There's Dolby-vision metadata included in projects, and I think that's when it's exporting the final file, I think, so it plays back well on iPads and Apple devices. And the last thing is about a little improvement to the proxy workflow. And those are the 4 aspects of Final Cut 10.5. And also they dropped the X. They're on Apple's websites and on all their web pages and their support pages and in the About box. They don't have an X there or a 10.
Interesting. Victor and Sky really fast. We're going to burn.
Just going to attach real quick. I tried out the new feature for Smart Reframe on DaVinci 17 beta to make a TikTok. It's fantastic. Works great. Analyzes everything, but then gives you the ability to use keyframes to adjust things. So for a noob like me, it's a win.
Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
So is it Final Cut Pro or what? So my real question is, with regards to the marketing, do we really trust it, or is it just an NAB release of things that could possibly be?
Well, it's not that many. It's not many updates. So,
but are they?
My imagine is
are they
probably
functioning, or are they just marketing?
Oh no! When Apple do updates, they stress test them, so they're pretty reliable. So when you do get an update, apart from a slightly flaky 10.4.9, you can actually relatively trust it. So give it a couple of weeks and then check it out.
Copy that. Thank you.
I don't have a lot of confidence in compressor right now, so we can talk about that at some point. But I think they've missed the mark on that one. All right, next question.
Next question is from.
We're gonna go a little heavy, but we are gonna go a little heavy to answer all the questions, but really answer like a couple sentences if you can for the next ones. Go ahead.
All right, Jeff Francis asks, are ATMOS objects exclusively mono audio files, or can they be stereo, multi-channel, etc.?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, from the point of view of the ATMOS render and also the deliverables, the ATMOS deliverables like ADM and RPL, they are just mono audio feeds. But within your DAW, you can do whatever you want. You can do stereo, you can do multi-channel. You just have to assign the individual channel outputs of those tracks to the mono feeds that go into the renderer.
Thanks.
Next question.
Next question is from TJ Asher. He asks, question for Jason or other Mac experts. Now that Big Sur is here, how can I make my Mac ignore the Big Sur update, since I doubt I'll ever be installing Big Sur on my current hardware? I don't want to miss other security updates, however. And note, the terminal command like I used for Catalina did not work. Sudo software update, ignore macOS Big Sur.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Sadly, there's nothing yet, but with Catalina, somebody wrote an app that made it so that it wouldn't update to new versions of Catalina. So I think there's enough people irritated by this that if we wait a couple of months or so, or a while, the badge will go away and you'll be able to stick with. Hopefully, Mojave will be best, but maybe to Big Sur or something like that.
Next question.
Marty says, I have several NDI cameras that I want to gang ISO record to a network attached storage. What might work for such a mission?
I don't know if we have the right NDI experts here to gang a bunch of NDI ISOs. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, there's that NDI monitor app that could record, and you can have multiple instances of them. So I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but that's a way to. That's an option.
NDI monitor.
Yeah, it's part of the NDI tool suite.
I think that you can record also. I'm not sure. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, you can record ISO in Wirecast, and you can record ISO in vMix through NDI cameras. So that would probably be your best way. Doing the studio monitor, in order to do each individual one, I think you'd actually have to have a computer for each camera doing a record. So that might not be a possibility there.
Yeah, it did say, Chad did put in for Marty that vMix will record ISOs of NDI. So that probably is one place to look. Next question.
Next question, Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York says, suggested external recorder for DaVinci Resolve user. Recording from vMix monitor would be nice, but budget is primary concern.
Well, for a Resolve user, I'm assuming you want a high resolution record, some kind of Apple ProRes or something like that to do that. I feel like the least expensive way to do that most of the time is the camera assist from Blackmagic. Just takes that output. Although if you're recording from vMix, you'd have to somehow get it out. You'd have to have an SDI out or something to push that program out. You should be able to do it in software. You may have some frame loss. I think that's the biggest problem with software recording. The biggest issue you end up with is frame loss, and you have to have really fast drives and a fast computer and those types of things to make sure that you're not losing any frames. So if that's what you're trying to avoid, then having some kind of external device makes sense. When I do screen captures for training, I still use an old Pix 240 because I can just hit record and it doesn't have any pressure on my computer and just records all the frames. Go ahead, Courtney, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I agree. With the Blackmagic Video Assist, even the small one, the 4.5, it has HDMI inputs and SDI inputs. So you come directly out of an HDMI and into that. As long as you go in 1080p. Does he say when I record 4K?
He didn't say that.
Okay, well, 1080p it will work fine, and you can do MXF or ProRes.
Yep.
So you choose your compression.
Next question.
Next question is from James Babbitt in San Diego. He asks, when making a fiber optic internet connection, would you connect the fiber at the output to a router, or what equipment would you use to change the fiber into a copper wire?
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey, and then Peter.
Yeah, it really depends on where exactly he is picking up that fiber connection. Like if it's like really early on in the chain, where it's still split up into different what do you call it, wavelengths, then you need a higher end media converter for that. But if it's later on in the chain wherein he can convert it to a regular LC connector that can go into an SFP or SFP plus module, then that's fairly easy. You just need the proper cables and an SFP module that works with that cabling.
And a lot of routers, higher end routers, will have an SFP built into them. So it's just literally, or an SFP slot that all you got to do is get the right SFP and slide it in, and then it's going to be in the router. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. But generally, your ISP or your fiber wholesaler will actually provide you with a optical network terminal, and that does the conversion from fiber into Ethernet. So,
yeah. Guy.
I was going to say the same thing that Peter just said. We've got them from both here at my house. I've got Ziply, and it's a little box. They call it an ONT. I'm not sure what that stands for, but it converts the fiber into a Cat5. And then at the office, we have Comcast, and they supplied a bunch of hardware, and it does come in through an SFP module into our switch.
Next question. Last one of the hour.
Next question is from Eric Hall in Mount Vernon. He asks, is it possible to bring two cameras in on the end of a single 100-foot SDI coax run using Blackmagic microconverters? Note, I guess I am asking for an HDMI multiplexer.
Usually when we start to gang cameras, we're using fiber, because it puts each one of those signals on another wavelength. And so you can, you can get, there's a lot of ways of doing it that way. You can gang 8 cameras onto one strand of fiber. The only place when you start getting up to 8, hard corners start to become a problem on some wavelengths. So you have to think about that a little bit. But at 4 to 6, it's nothing. Put it on fiber. But to put it on coax, we have sent. So the Ozo, of all things, used to mux up to 8 signals onto one piece of coax. But it was a custom mux and demux that they built to do that. So it's not impossible, but I don't know of any commercial product that does that. So you would need an encoder and decoder on both sides. Okay. All right. So we're gonna shift gears. Guy, are you still in, or you need to go?
Yeah, I think that I don't need to go. It's just it might get loud around here. The kids are still sleeping, but let's see how it goes.
All good.
All right. First question from Jeffrey Powers.
Okay. So and to kind of outline, before we get into the questions here, just to outline, we're switching gears to what we're going to be talking about for the next hour is really thinking about how to build remote kits. A lot of us are doing remote events, virtual events. And the first step is you're happy to survive the remote event, and everyone just joins how they join. But over time, we learned that the more we sent out, and a little bit of our background is we started doing kits in 2011 for Google Hangouts. And so we were the Google Hangout white glove team that managed most of the higher end Hangouts. And so those kits, it started off with nothing. We were just informally just do the best we can to make them look good. But we eventually got to a point where we had 20 kits just sitting in boxes, ready, pre-built, pre-set up. And we would just send them out. And they would come back, as well. I mean, we would send them out in COVID. We don't ask for them back. But before we would rent them to the client. Like, this is how much this is how much it costs to supply everybody with a kit. And then they'd all come back. And so But it was a constant flow of kits that we were supporting. And so over time, we started to refine that kit down to it. And we've got a couple different levels of kits that we use. Our kits really start at about we don't have a lot of really small kits, but our kits start at about $400 a piece, that of all the components, and then go up from there. So they go up to our largest kits are about 20,000 a piece. But it's a lot of gear, to support. That's like a true production. Like you're sending a little studio to somebody's house. We don't do that very often. So, but the most common one is the $400 one, and then we have like a $4,000 or $5,000 one that's pretty good. And so, anyway, so that's we build these out, and the reason you do that is for number one is just you standardize everybody on the same thing. You know how to support them, and this is for higher end events, but you know how to support them. You know how to make sure that you have people who know that gear. Generally, people think that they look way better and sound way better than they actually do. I mean, so by sending them something, you can actually ensure that they look and sound as good as they think they sound. Everyone's like, I sound great. And then once they hear or see what they actually sound like compared to what they could sound like, they start to see the difference. And so we built these kits, we sent them all over the world. And we'll answer your questions, and I'll kind of outline the things that we're using for ours, especially the smaller kit, which is probably more applicable. But I would highly recommend thinking about it, at least for some of them. And you can recommend people to go buy stuff, or you can actually send it to them. It just depends on what your budget is and what their budget is, and so on and so forth. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the questions around those.
Alrighty, Jeffrey Power starts it out with looking to create a left and right kit so that the guest is in stereo on one side and second guest on the other for easier post-mixing of audio. Trying not to add a mixer to the kit.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
A simple USB interface like a Sapphire, 2 input, 2i2. If you put that USB into Zoom, then the 2 mic inputs would go left and right. And it does have headphone monitoring. It doesn't have 2 headphones, so that's a problem for getting both of them to listen. But
and Mickey?
Yeah, Jeffrey, are you thinking of kits to send out to people?
Yeah, these are kits. Yeah, these are kits that go out to people. They got to be just as we've said. They've got to be very basic. And the only thing I can think of is in the stereo microphone, you get some sort of splitter, but there's no USB left-right option, which would have been the most optimal.
When you say post mixing, like that means like you're going to be recording and then processing things afterwards.
Oh yeah, because it's easier to split the left and right channel, and then have one person on one and then the other on the other, and then fix each one and then put it back together.
So yeah, if they're doing ISO, if you're doing ISO recordings of each participant, I don't think there would be a need to do like a left kit, right kit, sort of thing. If that
not in Zoom, no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
I see what you mean through Zoom.
That way, yeah.
Okay.
So basically,
not having like ISO recordings. You're recording.
Here's what I do. What I've been doing, because all these executives are big Zoom, and they know that, and just like Skype, the whole idea is that I have one computer that records the guest and the presentation, and then I have another computer that records the host, and so they end up coming into my ATEM Mini Pro as individual channels, which does get ISO recorded, but the audio is always the exact same. So if I have, if I have it where one person's on the left channel and the other person's on the right channel, I can go into that video, knock out the right channel knock out the left channel.
Yeah, I think that the issue you're going to have with this right now is that what we've already seen here with Victor's challenges is that you don't know, no matter what you do to set up the hardware, we don't know if Zoom is actually supporting stereo, and it seems that it supports it part of the meeting and then not other parts, and not in other parts of the meeting. So I think that that there's probably some opportunities to build some stuff. I mean, when we're not using Zoom, if we're doing audio, just audio only, we use things like Squadcast.fm or IP DTL for audio. If you're doing audio only, then you can do those because the Squadcast records locally and then uploads their ISO, from it. and which is a much better way to do that. And I didn't know about it until someone asked me to do on their podcast, and that's how they used it. But if you're doing video and you're doing Zoom, I don't think there's any. The way we do that is that we bring them in as two isolated connections, and then we do the cross mix so they can see and hear each other through our system. So we're actually interconnecting them on our end, but creating the complexity on our end is way easier than, it may seem like it's hard, but it's way easier for us to create the complexity on our end than create it on their end. So all they have to do is jump in and do the thing that they're going to do. And then what we do is and with only two people, you would be able to do this. If you're doing stereo, you just have two computers, and then you just have to give them each a mix minus. And you don't really have to show them. You could show, and then some way to show them the other person. You'd link the output to the input and the input to the output, of either computer. You'd cross connect those computers and then give them in a mixer, just give them a simple mix minus, and you'd be able to have them have a conversation. The latency will be slightly higher than Zoom, but we find that it's very successful. We do all of our events that way, except we do it with, 14 computers. so they, you can have a lot of people jumping into them and being part of that, but with two, it's super simple to do it that way. I would do that before I would send them gear. Next question.
Next question is from James Babbitt in San Diego. He says, Jeff Francis made a video showing no-cost Zoom improvements. Any interest in making one video that shows all the kits available at every price level?
Yeah, I just have to get around to it. So it's just a matter of putting them together. So, yeah, it's just a matter of getting to it. I think that we're working on that. We'll try to post more about it. We're not trying to hide how we do it because we want more people to be successful. My goal is to make virtual events as successful as possible in the shortest amount of time. That's why part of why we created this was to make sure that everyone's being successful. So we'll post some more links in the Discord over some of the stuff, and I'm happy to, I'll list off a little bit of some of the tools that we use just so people can kind of get it there. I don't have a display to show you, but the number one thing, there's a list when you think about remote connections, there's a list of priorities. So the first list is connection. They have to be connected over wired connections. They, should not be over Wi-Fi. That is the worst thing, of all the things that can happen, and that they have at least 5 megabits up. And technically they're not sharing. Generally we're looking for 10 megabits up. Now Zoom nominally uses 3.25 megabits per second to our measurement. So what we measure Zoom using is 3.25, but you want generally twice that. So you have a little headroom. You want to make sure that they're not using anything else on their computer. You want to try to know who else is using that connection. So there's a whole bunch of questions that you have related to that, that you have to kind of source through. The second most important thing after that is audio. So we want to get them a strong audio connection. Our audio ranges from the low end, of course, is the Pulson with the TechRise that we send, and that's the most common thing that we send out. It makes a huge difference. It is 80% of it is just that mic. It's a $25 solution that just wipes out huge chunks of problems, from room reverbance to echoing and extraneous sound, everything else. That thing just makes everything go away. The next 20% of really turning it all the way up, we'll send out a mix pre with this noise assist with a Countryman. The Countryman that I'm wearing here, mix pre, we install the noise assist on it. So that's a much more expensive. That goes from $25 to about $1,500. Is about what we calculate for that add-on to the kit. Is a bit more expensive. And so that jumps up maybe a little bit more than that, but it's about that. And then for some remote kits, we'll send out shotguns. There's certain people that don't want to put headsets on and things like that, and so we'll do it. We find this is the easiest one. It just keeps everybody connected to it. Then the next step down is actually, people will think it's a webcam, but for us, it's a lighting. So a lot of webcams look okay if they have enough light, so it's, there's, and one thing about the audio as well is we always send people an IFB. So we have one around here somewhere, but we send out typically the auto because it's a really inexpensive one that we can send out that's relatively solid. Although recently we've had a lot of complaints about the volume on the auto. So we're kind of still playing with that. The next step up from that is the audio implements. And I can't list off one because you piecemeal it together, but an audio, it's a 15, I think it's the 15 something or other that is the amp that we use. But and we typically use a right ear amp with and then we send out both a stereo and mono jack connection, for it. So that's about $130. So it's, instead of the auto being $40 or $50, that's $130 for the earpiece. Even if they wear their own headset and they roll it over behind them, it's better than having open speakers, because Zoom is going to, the echo cancellation that all these do, you're like, oh, it just works, I can just turn it on. It's cutting off the beginning and end of everything, and it's reducing the overall quality of their audio dramatically, because it's still, the audio was still one feed, and then it smartly took it away, but it's still ripping things out of your audio. So if you want clean audio, they should have a headset on. They shouldn't have an open speaker. So that's in the audio. So having a headset with an earpiece will literally knock out 80% of their issues. Then lighting. Now what we have gone through so many lighting things. But right now what we've kind of leaned around from a cost-effective perspective, ease of setup, ease of location and everything else, are the Nanlite LumaPad 25s. Those are the ones that are the easiest to use. They're not too expensive. I think they're like $110 or something like that. And those are relatively easy to use, easy to put up, and people look pretty good in them. We sent out ring lights for a while, but we wanted big ring lights, and when we sent those big ring lights out, people had a hard time setting them up. So, the LumaPads were the thing that were kind of easiest to put together, with a short little stand that can either be on their desk, kind of thing. We don't feel like the lighting we haven't knocked it out of the park yet, but that's been the best solution that we've seen so far. We just get bigger NAND lights when they have bigger shows. And so our larger kits have, we use 200Bs. They're too big, just in case you're wondering. They're too large for the client, and you can't turn them down enough. So 100Bs, two 100Bs are in the larger kits. But the reason we use NAND lights is they're just the ease of use for the far end is it's very, very easy for them to set up and very easy to control. And so we've kind of circled around those after testing lots of lights. Then the webcams, we're still experimenting with Huddle, but what we send out generally is C920s and Brios, because they're a little smaller than the Huddle cams, and they are. Brio is, I think we're getting pretty close to standardizing on Brios only. So this last round we did a bunch of 920s. Thank you, Hosmo, and they looked great, but we can't pan and tilt, the way we did with Brios. And so being able to remote in and be able to pan and scan inside of that camera is super valuable to us. So, but the 920s are less expensive, and as they get back to catching up, they'll get back down to $80 or $90 a piece. So they're a good price point. But the Brios at $199, if you can get them, are great. The stream cams are good, but they just haven't they haven't been able to make them in any kind of volume. And they're USB-C, so it's limitation for us. Anyway, so those are the ones that we use for the cameras. And then after that, it's all environment. Just some of the kits we have, we're now sending out the Lazalights. So the Lazalight 6x7 screen that I have behind me, for some kits, we're including those in there, about $150. A lot of people don't want to show off that. They don't want to show off their background. They just don't want to show where they're from. They don't want people looking at the books behind them. They don't want whatever. So we've added it as another option of what we're doing. And then when we step up on cameras, there's not really, for us, there's the Brio, and then we just step straight up to a 6K. Like there's not any in between that we have in that process, because I don't see any significant difference in the quality based and weighing that with the amount of trouble it'll be to set up. When we switch up to the 6K, we're also switching to an ATEM, mini, so that we can control it. And then you're talking about a Meraki and a bunch of other things, or some kind of Raspberry Pi to do port forwarding to allow us to now control focus on the camera and shade the camera and do all those other things. And so that's a much bigger kit, but that's where we kind of go with that. So that's kind of me just doing a dump of what we're doing right now as far as the thinking goes. Mickey and then Sky.
Yeah, two questions, Alex. Like the 3.25 megabits per second, that's at 720, right?
We just see it all the time. I mean, in general, when we're looking at it, I think it's at 720. I haven't seen any number higher. So I think that when it goes to 1080, it just does It does the same
Some
bandwidth,
more
but
bit
just
crunching.
it's more bit crunching. So I think that you get
Right.
a more compressed version of it. I think that 720. I think 720 is actually the right number right now for them. I would be happy if Zoom gave us 720 for all the participants and not 1080. I don't need them to give me 1080 for all the participants. It's just that 640 by 360 is too low. So
And the second thing, like in the situations where in your participants, your presenters, uh, they allow you to show their background. Do you guys help guide them in terms of PDing their backgrounds,
oh
or
yeah.
do you leave it up to them?
No, we move them all over the house. Like we wander around the house. We try to find locations. Some of the things we do is, you want your camera to be at eye level or within 6 inches higher than them. So one of the big things that you do with camera position is they're all, looking like this all the time. And so you want to persuade them to go find books. Just find some books. Just go to your library and grab 6 books or 8 books, and they stack it all up and they balance their laptop on it, and then they put it there. And trying to get the camera not attached to the desk that they're on is a great thing if you can. So being able to have the camera, have a little tripod for the camera that's not going to be on the desk, because every time they hit the desk, you can see me. People will do that. You'd be surprised. And sometimes it takes less than that to have it move around. And so not having vibration is a thing. So that's something we take into account as we look at it. But we definitely wander around there. We've spent hours on some events wandering around their living room, and figuring out, like, living room, kitchen, whatever, trying to figure out something. Because we'll also, on a larger event, we will also try to think about the difference between each remote participant. So how do we distinguish them so that each one of them looks different? So they're not all looking like, if we have 2 people in front of, like John Idelson right now is in front of a pseudo library, we don't want 2 people like that. So if we have 1 person in front of a library wall, we want to be, that's the only person that's in front of that wall. And then, because that way, when a viewer's watching it, it's easy. You want to think about how they view it, and it feels, like it's moving. The only time we don't have that is if we do gray screens, which we've done. Typically, we've done gray screens with some kind of uplight. And some of you've seen some people here use it, and I've used it every once in a while. So a color uplight, and then we'll use different colors for each person to kind of distinguish them from each other. But it makes it easier for the viewer to do it. One thing we do think about when we think about those remote locations is a good example is like John's. I'm going to pick on John a little bit, but John and both Johns, Preto and Idelson, have pretty complex backgrounds, and so we want to try to minimize that for a couple of reasons. One is that it's just hard to see them as well in the scene, and then Preto just left. I just gave him a hard time, and he's off he went. All right. So anyway, so sorry. Anyway, so the backgrounds are busy. And that's not also good for compression. So busier backgrounds will mean the subject is oftentimes less sharp than they could be, because the Zoom will use up, any kind of real-time thing will use up a lot of the data, the spatial data, to hang on to a complex background. That's why we want to blur it. So blurred backgrounds as best you can work well. So go ahead, Sky.
Well, yeah, I was also going to not pick on John Idelson, but note that for a green screen, I assume it's a green screen, their lighting is particularly good. I mean, the active thing that the Zoom is doing for the cutout is pretty crisp. But of course, I kept trying to read what
that's the thing. That's
books are on the wall, and I was also wondering, obviously that's somebody's library, unless you are that anal to have a Dewey Decimal System in your house.
And the tricky part,
this is not my normal background. I had other things going on, so I'm.
What is the lighting? Because it's really, it's if you're going to go that direction, that lighting.
It works pretty well. So the what's nice about it is that John's lighting looks like the library is getting more light from the same side that John is. The hard part is John's color space is not quite the same as the background, so he would have to tweak the foreground a little bit, and so those would be the things that we would think about there. Anyway, so
shadows too are always your giveaway, your fake. But what lighting system are you using, John? Because it's if you have to go do this, hello, just one of those? You got 2 on either side. What's the other side?
2 on either side and desk lamps. And unfortunately, I don't darken my room completely, so the sun's come out. So This was
This has
looking
worked in
much
your
better
case.
earlier.
You guys talking about sun?
Yeah, exactly. We do try to get rid of most of the sunlight if we can. Especially when you test remotes, one of the things you want to do is test at the same time. This is really important. Try to test at the same time or do your rehearsal at the same time of day that your event is so that you can see what everybody looks like at that time of day. We've had people who look great and then they come in at the 7 o'clock hour or 6 o'clock hour and it's dark, and you realize that everything that you thought was lighting was a big bunch of windows. And so you have to, windows are kind of the devil when it comes to this, unless you're doing it right at the right time and you've tested it. It can be great because a big window is this nice giant light source. So it can work well, but it's very unstable. Go ahead,
I was
Jeff.
just going to share the cloud shine that we've got coming in my window.
Jeff.
Anyway, this is the normal background I use, but for some reason I had the bookcases up from yesterday.
No, that's good. That's good. Jeff?
When you send out the 6K, what lens are you using?
We are using, typically when we send it out, it is the, I think it's a 16 to 35. I think it's 16 to 35. That's the one that we tend to send out. It's a L series. So it's pretty good, pretty fast lens. It's either that or the 24 to 70 is a little too long. It just tends to go a little too long for what we're doing because remember, you're getting a multiplier for the Super 35. So you're really, doing, so the 16 to 35 is a really nice focal length, for that one.
And you're set up to remote control all of that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's no reason to send it out. There is. You can send it out. We've used it as a dumb terminal before, where we have to work with them to set it up. The tricky part is that you do have to think about it because, for instance, what kind of LUT do you want to do, and what kind of there's things there, and that can get really complicated. So you try to get it into a basic state. But yeah, what you want to do is have the ATEM there, and then be able to shade the camera. And it's not the shading the camera is not what you want to do the most. It's really, and you might do color a little bit, but the big thing is focus. The big value of being able to send it out is to be able to do fine focus. If you're going to do a short depth of field connection with somebody, you can make them look great, but otherwise you have to increase that depth of field because they're going to be leaning in and out. When you have live control over it, if they settle in like this, I can sit there and just tweak the focus, effectively, and that's super useful. So that's the number one reason that we need that. And we do think that, to John Preto's point earlier, that we would love to build something that allowed us to control the camera without we don't need the switcher. We just haven't built code to control the camera. The API is there to do it. We just haven't used it yet. So, being able to remote control the camera. And we would love to see Zoom give us more, UVC control over the cameras. Like right now we get, with the Brio, we can move around and we can zoom in and out. What we want is all the color tools that are available on a UVC camera would be very useful. Go ahead, Tony.
So I just wanted to be clear. So you're saying that this kit that you're sending out is a purchase and not a rental because of COVID?
Yeah, we don't want them back. It's just too complicated for us to get them back.
Okay.
So they're just cost of doing business, and we it wasn't cheap before. We would spend more on them. We built the kits that we used to have were about 700. We're charging about the same amount of money. We would charge 350 or so for the kits to rent them, but they were more expensive back then, so, and we would get about 70% return. If you want them returned, the key is that you never expect, as a good producer, you never expect people to do what they're supposed to do. You realize that you need to make it easy for them. You do the work so that they don't have to, and you'll get it back. So the things that we would do to get remote kits back is, number one is we tell them that we're going to send them one, we're going to get it back. Number two is we send them a return label. So they don't have to come up with the label or how they're going to get it to us, and they don't have to figure out how to pay for it or anything else. There's a return label in there. All they got to do is paste it on. We include the tape. You'd be surprised at how many people don't send back the kits because they couldn't tape it back up again. Like all they had was Scotch tape in the house, and then it just waits for weeks because they have to get packing tape to do it. So you give them a roll of tape that just use this tape, and it's part of the little training of you can put this tape on, you put the thing on, you put it outside, and it goes away. So the labels, the tape, then the day after the event, they're going to get a phone call from somebody. And then a week after the event, they're going to get a phone call from someone. And then, and you just have someone on a tickler system that's just going to call everybody and remind them that, hey, we'd really like to get that back, and then, and we increased by doing those things, we increased our return rate, I think it was in the upper 20% to nearly 80%, would come back just by making it easy for people. Don't want to take your kit. The people that you're bringing into these things, they just don't have time to get around to sending it back. And I'm one of those people, like I order stuff from Amazon. I don't want it and never return it just because of the time that it would take to do it is too long. So getting that out of people's way will get your remote kits back if you want to bring them back. It is a great remote kits for speakers, as a note, is a great tchotchke. You used to give people cases and things and nice whatever. Speakers, especially now that we're getting good at this, like on the new version that we have right now, speakers love getting these. They're like, this is amazing. I can't believe how much better I look and I sound. And it's a really good, like, they have a real warm feeling about your event after they leave because they got this great kit, they got taken care of, and then what we're starting to do is we're incorporating, t-shirts from the client and little extras and, whatever else you want. So the fact that you're sending a kit out is an opportunity that you have their address and you can send them all kinds of cool things, and we make sure that, how to contact us is in there. So the thing is that there's a lot of, that a lot of times if you're spending the money to send that kit out, there's a great opportunity to interact for your client to interact with the speakers and give them what would have been a swag bag, in the earlier days of that process. And so you want to think about that also as reminding your clients that you can have that kind of added value add that's there. Go ahead, Sky.
I love that swag bag concept. Thank you. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah.
When I returned, the Apple laptop sends you a box. It physically came with a piece of paper that had pieces of tape, and it showed it printed on the box where the tape was supposed to go. And it was the same size as the piece of paper that had the piece of tape. And so it was like, they really simplified it. And it was like, oh yeah, click. Oh, look, I'm supposed to do this. Oh, slip and hand it back to the UPS guy. And a week later, the laptop came back.
Yeah. And there was a couple of comments in the thing about, telling clients that they'll pay later. And we just found it better to tell them they're just paying up front. Like there's no kit, the kids are going out, they're going to stay out, they're not coming back. I mean, the bigger ones some of them come back. I mean, we've sent ones out that are thousands of dollars that never come back. It's for a big event and we don't ask for them back. I mean, thanks for being part of our event. And remember that for like a large event, you have to remember that they would have flown that person in. They would have put them in a 4 or 5 star hotel. They would have fed them. I mean, it was going to cost them to have speakers come in for their event. It was going to cost them $5,000, $6,000, no matter what, to do that. So why not send them a kit and then they have a great kit? And again, the clients that we have that are really succeeding at these things are taking their events budget and applying it to virtual events. They're not trying to do it for $10. That's the thing that, what makes these events great is when people say, okay, we're going to do it over Zoom, but we're going to make it look amazing, and we're going to take the same budget or a similar budget or even 50% of the budget. I mean, you think about if you go to a conference that has a big booth, that's millions of dollars, millions, like a 40 by 40 booth at NAB, just calculate in your head. It's probably $3 to $5 million of investment minimum. That's, for 40 by 40, like the Avid booth, it's for, and I'm probably shooting low. I'm being conservative. I don't want to sound that's probably more like $8 to $10 million for the design, the Teamsters, the bringing your entire staff in, putting them all up in hotels, paying for all their food, paying for everything else. It's a huge investment. But when you try to do your virtual event for $1,000 and you can't figure, well, this is virtual events don't work. Of course, you're if you got a 40 by 40 space at NAB and you spend $1,000, it wouldn't work either. So you have to remember that, the event, the companies that are realizing that they need to spend money, the same money that they're spending on events or a similar number for virtual events are not creating great events that have you feel like, why were we ever going there? But the folks that are trying to do it with one person, not so much. Go to Hosmuc, and then we'll get back to questions because we're running running long.
I
on
assume
questions.
you send out kits to only the speakers or the talent that are participating in a meeting.
Depends on the event.
Okay. So this afternoon in this discussion with medical school, I thought of sending out a video similar to Jeff, or in fact Jeff's own video on how they can look good in a meeting. So send a video that's a training video in terms of the light, the camera, and everything else. So.
And we send out videos with the kits. So like here's it's a little build video that with the larger kits. The smaller kits we haven't done because they were changing so much. Now we're going to build a kit. We're going to build a video over this next month or so, and you guys can see that when I get it done. But it's I shot the last one with an iPhone. Like it's easy to do, but we designed them so that we show every single step, and you try to cut it down so that it's really efficient. But if you watch something for 5 minutes, you'll understand how to build the kit. Go ahead, John Iddleston.
You unpack everything, right? We worked with somebody who just bought them at Amazon, sent them out, and it was a hassle because
it's a
just
disaster.
getting people.
No, we build. Well, not only that, everything is about presentation. So I think partially because we come from events, our background was events before streaming and everything else. We're not mechanical about it. We realized that all the bags that you put out, had little, in the events that we would do, all the bags would have little tassels, and there was somebody who spent days putting these bags together for everybody, so they would look just right. And so in the same way, we treat these kits. So the kits come out, we take them out, we get them all pre-configured, we get them all set up, we put them all in. Right now we're auditioning bags to put them in. So we're going to have like nice little bags that you can keep the whole kit in, that you can travel with, and you can, because the idea is they're sending something of value, to folks. And so they're still coming in boxes at the moment, but they're carefully put all out and they're laid out in a certain way. So it has a nice, a presentation when you open it. You're representing your client to them, to that group. And so when you send out a kit, everything that you do in every event tells people whether the event matters or not. And whether they matter. And so when you send out a kit that has a great presentation, there are times when we've had to drop ship kits to people because there's no time, right? But if we have the time to do it, we're going to put it together very nicely. And when people get it, they're going to go, oh, when they open it up, there should be some surprise and delight. Like, wow, look at this, look at the cool little kit, and so they pull it out and everything else. And the idea is that there'll be some instructions and then someone's going to call and take care of them. And it's all the things that you would have, again, if you were a real speaker going to something, you'd be taken care of, you'd be picked up at the airport and you'd be put in a, whatever. And so we're doing that version of it by sending the kit out. And so you want to make it as pleasing, as possible as you work through it.
The best kit I made had chocolate, sea salt, chocolate caramels.
Yes.
From Monterey.
Well, now that
it's a custom place in Monterey, it's family-run business. That
we've got
this chocolate should be listed as a drug, and we put it in a kit.
We've got one of those here in Seattle called Bohem's, and that's
yeah.
But my point was, Alex, again, little nuggets keep dropping out of your mouth, and surprise and delight. Because there's good surprises and there's not good surprises.
Right. You need both of them together. Yeah, absolutely.
But how to have could you riff on surprise and delight? What, where, when, how does that happen?
It's just having them to be surprised, that like, wow, I didn't expect something to be that good. You just want people to not like have it be, you try to find places in all events to have people be surprised at how good it could be,
happy surprises.
Happy surprises. You just want to you want to always over deliver, but you may not over deliver everywhere, but you want to find all the places that you can, and just kind of keep on, and for this at every level, and it can be the way that the individuals are taken care of, the way that everything about it. You want to think through all of those things. A lot of times we have these discussions about the participant, just the participants. What's their journey from the time they found out about the event? How do they find out about the event? And when they get to the event, how do they register? And when they register, what happens next? And when do they know? And when do they have certainty? And when they get to the event, when they walk in, what is the music like? And what kind of things? And what are we showing them? And all these things that create certainty, that create like things that are under control. Those are all things, and the kits are all part of that.
Well, and because I hang out with Graham Kerr, he really cued me into understanding about hospitality because he was raised in the hotel. I mean, he was physically raised in hotels. So the
Well, and-
concept of being a guest and working towards their delight, that was a huge focus.
And my favorite is I load into, I've actually stayed there a couple times, but when you load into the Ritz hotel, the plaque on the plaque on the load in dock says, "Ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen." And it's a way of thinking that everyone you're going to be that way, and you're going to treat everybody that way. It's a process.
We'll have to look into grave tie.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Now we're gonna accelerate here. We've stacked up a bunch of questions, so we're gonna move faster than we have been in the past. Let's go to the next question.
All right. First one is Jason Panks. Remote cameras, simple USB webcam or something fancier and a bit more costly, complex.
And I covered that a little bit. I mean, we've really centered around the C920s and the Brios are the ones that we focus mostly on. For what we send out to people, easy to use. The Brios are better because in Zoom we can pan and they're at $199. They're a pretty good value of that. And then after that, we just jump straight to Blackmagic cameras. Go ahead, Alex.
When you say Brio, I'm looking up the website. This is Brio Stream, and also there's the Brio Ultra HD Pro webcam. Which Brio do you mean?
The Ultra HD.
Ultra HD.
All right, so Stream is Windows only. Maybe I think that's as far as I can tell from the website.
There's the Stream Cam, the 4K Pro webcam. This is the one we're using. Yeah, cool. And Hosmic knows because he bought a bunch of them for me. Because he's the broker. I don't think he wants to be the broker. We shouldn't out him as the broker. But anyway, so yeah, Ultra HD Pro.
Can't say no to you, Alex.
Thank you. All right, next question. Actually, on that note, I wanted to recommend Camo as well for use with the web. Sorry, the kids are definitely up now. The Camo app works really well, or the Filmic Pro app for use with an iPhone via the HDMI out. You can do the clean HDMI now. So those are two other options to bridge that gap between a 6K and a USB camera. The clarity of that lens, I mean, the iPhone 11 and 12 just look amazing. So a couple more recommendations there for Jason.
I'm hoping to test that tomorrow. I was going to try to do it today. I just ran out of time, but I'm going to try to test it as using it for my camera over the weekend just to try to see how it looks. So. Yep. Next question.
Well, when the Filmic Pro guy came in, it looked amazing. I mean, we were all pretty shocked at how that clean HDMI looked going through. I think he came in through an ATEM Mini as well. I don't remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Next question is James Babbitt from San Diego that says, Alex, which light stand do you send out with the Nanlite LumaPad 25?
I have to look. We just changed it, and I will put that in a general. I apologize, but put that in a general question tomorrow or sometime next week, and I just got to check with Shannon. We just changed those out there. We went from large Manfrotto light stand, longer Manfrotto ones to shorter ones that were cheaper. But I can't remember what the name of them is. So, but what we did is we found ones that were short stands. We used to use long stands so we could put them on the other side, but we had a lot of people that didn't have anywhere to put them. So shorter stands that we could put on a desk turned out to be the winner. But I have to, I'll find out what the brand is. Next question.
Next one's from Marty. He says, what solutions have y'all found for remote controlled lighting?
DMX over IP is like once you, that's the, I mean, and we talked about this in the past, the one that we, and I will admit that I've only had to do this one time we researched it a bunch. ArtNet, I think is the one that we used for some of our tests. Is ArtNet is the one that but you need to have a DMX over IP slams the network. Yeah, it does. We've only had to do it once and it worked great, but it was a lot of beefy networks, so that could be part of the way it worked. But I will say 99% of the time we have the end user is just doing the work there. I think that there's a way that we could, I am still researching that to Marty's point. I'm still trying to figure out a way to have local DMX that is only changing when it's given a call, and that I don't have a solution for yet. Is is to find a way to have a DMX controller that only changes when it gets something. So, but we haven't figured that one out yet. I don't know if anybody else has. Next question.
Next one's from Jason in Nashville. He says, inexpensive, low budget lighting.
The most inexpensive is like China balls. China balls are great. You're going to say, Jeff? Jeff Francis, were you about to
China
say
balls?
Yeah. China balls with, you put CFLs in there or LED lights in there, and depending on how much power, you can get some really powerful CFLs that are like this long, and they will light up a lot. But those big soft, so that's China balls are probably the cheapest, quick way to do that. And then go ahead, Tony.
So I'm rocking the newer ones. I think I shared with you guys on Sunday, and you get 2 lights for $40.
Oh, that's great.
And you get 2 lights, and you also get the color. I'm not sure what they're called. The slides to go in front of the lights.
Yep.
So you get blue, yellow, red.
Yep.
So you have those, and it's a good deal. And so far, so good. I've been kind of pushing them. I would recommend them if somebody needs something. $40.
Newer for $40. We'll get some of those to test them too. That sounds great. Sky.
Well, again, working with Tony, it's how far back do you need them to be? And also the stands I think you have are just kind of mini stands, so they work on like a table. So that's a limit.
Well, I actually have one on the floor. So this one is actually on the floor.
Okay, so it does have like a 3-foot or 4-foot extension.
It's okay. So this is the light.
$40.
And you're coming in pretty hot, as far as the mic goes. I don't.
Okay. So
or Tony is.
Tony is right. So anyway, for $40, it's a great kit. It's not going to light up a whole room. It's a great for what it is, for what Tony's using it for, I guess was my point. And I guess the other question I had is, Jeff Francis, what light source are you currently using? Is that just overheads?
This is a kit of, it was about under $70. It's 2 big soft boxes with humongous LEDs in them.
And who makes that?
I'm looking that up right now. Someone I've never heard of.
Yeah, and
there's the link for it.
My main fill is Guy Cochran's big 22-inch?
ESDDI softbox. It was just a cheap Amazon thing.
And it's how far away from your face and how high up, or how?
About 8 feet from me, and it's it's as high as the stand will go, so it's about 6 feet. And I actually turned one of them off because it was really kind of washing out this webcam, which is washed out as well when it's in USB mode. Right. Not adjustable unless you put a different bulb in it.
Right.
Or filter in front, like
yeah.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, question for Tony. Those newers, are those the ones that are powered off USB?
Yes, they are USB.
Do they have batteries in them, or just powered off of USB?
Just USB.
Got it. Okay. And next question.
Next question is from Alex. He asked, do you have a system for making it simpler for the contributor to pack properly to send back?
We're working on that. So, cutting out things for people to do and an instruction on how to put them back does make it easier. Our kits are pretty simple because a lot of what we do is we work really hard at not having them be complex. So what we send out is easy to put together, and it isn't very big. So the largest piece of our puzzle is the light, and the stand. And then after that, it's a bunch of little things. Like it's, the headset is small, and all little bits and pieces are relatively, there's only a couple pieces in our basic kit. And because we haven't worried about it as much, because we don't get them back, we don't have as much, we haven't been getting them back this year. In the past, we had kind of foam cutouts for what they needed to do, and so that it would be obvious where you needed to put things, because to your point, if there's a lot of construction, if it becomes a complex kit, you have to put it back. It's hard to put back. And so foam cutouts help a lot. a little instruction thing on how to put them back is useful. Little names on them stuck in there. I put it here, works well. But yeah, it's because we've been using them as losses on the way out. Like they just go out and don't come back. We haven't been as focused on it in this recent kit set. And if we do this again in a year, our kit will be completely different. We're constantly evolving. And at this point, we're starting to talk to manufacturers about what's missing. So we're talking to some manufacturers about, hey, it'd be really useful if we had this, because it's, like for instance, one of the things we've been pushing a lot is we really want a USB connection, a USB headset with an earpiece that goes into a USB connection. Like just a USB-A is fine, but just has that is all combined, one cable that goes up that just combines and spits out an audio and a mic for like $30, or $40, and so we haven't gotten it yet, but people are talking about it because that would solve a lot of problems on our end. That's like one big pain point, for us. Next question.
Yeah, that's one for the ThinkRight folks, John, that I've been testing out their headphones. Those are really durable headphones. If you're looking for something inexpensive, they're selling them by the tens of thousands to schools. And
what are they? Who makes them?
ThinkRight.
And are they over the ear, in ear?
They're big. They're like gamer style, and then they make a smaller one for kids. But the important thing is that they're really durable and they sound fantastic. So
we're trying to do a low profile. That's always our challenge.
That's what I was saying is we have a relationship with those guys. It'd be nice to get them in that R&D world because if anybody can do it, it's those guys for sure, or Rode or Shure or somebody else.
Yep.
All right, next question from Richon Clifton says, do you use any special equipment to assure the shipping is of the highest quality? Cardboard inserts, air-filled wrap, shrink wrap, and such. Thank you.
All of we don't use shrink wrap as much, but we, definitely packing them is for our smaller kits, it's pretty straightforward. They don't need a lot of packing, but for the other ones, we're using mostly bubble wrap. It's just the easiest one for us to handle. We do use biodegradable peanuts, at times when you have a lot of stuff that just needs the general packing, you want to keep it, going there. The problem really is if you're going to send them, one thing we haven't talked about is sending them internationally. We do send them international, and there's a whole bunch of issues that you get into with remote kits. One is, are they going to go through security and be torn apart? You can't, then you have to be that way you have to build lots of slots for them to go in and out of, because you can't depend on, customs to put them back the way that they found them. And so the other thing to think about with remote kits when you send them overseas is if they're worth more than a couple $100, you're going to deal with customs. And so even customs in smaller ones, but definitely on larger ones, customs becomes a big deal. And so just know that you will need to get there's two different ways of doing it. You pay the VAT going into Europe or into other countries, or you get a carnet and you get it back. So if it's an expensive one, like a $5,000 kit that you may want to get it back. And the reason is you'll save thousands of dollars. Like it'll cost you a ton of money to get it over there, but it'll cost you more to leave it there. So it's actually cheaper to have it slow boated back to you. And it's not because you want them back. It's because you're avoiding the VAT, by using a carnet. And I'm going to probably get Boomerang on to talk about carnets, because it's probably useful for us for an extra hour to just talk about how to get things in and out of the country. Because it's something that when we first started was very traumatic. And then after that, it became kind of automatic. Like we just had a whole team and system to get large amounts of gear in and out of the country. But it definitely takes a thing. It's definitely a thing. Anyway, next question.
Next one is from Adam Taylor in Providence. He asks, thoughts on adding ATEM streaming bridge to future kits? Too much tech for participants?
I don't see the ROI, to be honest with you. I was excited about the bridge, but without being able to control the remote end, that's all I cared about. The latency is too high, even in its low latency mode, to really use it as a conversation tool. So I don't think that it gets me anything. I think that there are places where if I was having remote correspondence and we throw to them for a little bit and then we throw to somebody else for a little bit, or we have a multi-camera in multiple places that we're jumping to, but they can't converse with each other at the latency that it has. And I think that I'm not super excited about using RTMP as my, my low latency connection. So, Mickey?
Yeah, just a quick thing. Isn't the streaming bridge usually the destination from something like an ATEM Mini Pro?
It is,
So
but
like,
but I'm saying like I could build a couple of those, but so that I could bring other people in who have ATEM Mini Pros on the far end, right? You know, like there'd be like 4 locations that had ATEM Minis with multiple cameras, and I could cut to each one of them, but the latency between the two is still measured in seconds.
yeah, I was just wondering because the question mentioned sending out the streaming bridge with the kits.
Oh,
So I
right.
think it would be better,
Yeah,
like in
I'd be
this
sending
situation, to send out the
the
ATEM
the
Minis
mini.
instead
Yeah.
of yeah.
And I think that the real missing piece here is that what I really needed was something that would traverse the open internet so that I could control that ATEM Mini. That's what I really wanted out of the bridge. That I wasn't clear when they did the announcement whether I'd be able to do or not, and because I can't, I'm not really interested. You know, like it doesn't really help me at all. So anyway, I might change my mind at some point and play with it, but it's not as exciting as I thought it would be. Next question.
Next question's from Kyle in Chicago. He asks, when you send a 6K/ATEM mini kit, do you send instruction manual? How do you know they can handle it?
Well, yeah, those are, you send an instruction manual, you send a video on how to put it together, you pre-configure absolutely everything, you know, so all they have to do is turn it on. And then of course you're expecting to spend an hour with, you're budgeting an hour of time at least, and sometimes 2 hours to set up, and they have to be committed to doing it. They have to make, you have to have people on the other end that are committed to the process. And usually when we send out kits in general, the peer pressure is what we use mostly for people that don't want to spend time working with us. We're like, well, everyone else is getting this kit, so we'd really like you to look as good as they do. And you kind of, it's kind of the cop, that tells you that I'm talking to Mickey over here right after I finish talking to you, and then Frank is over here. And so if you don't tell me, they're going to tell me, and so in the same way, you kind of say, well, everybody else is going to look good. They all have this great camera. If you're just on your webcam, you may not look as good as everybody else or sound as good as everybody else. So you want to have, it's sometimes a bit of a conversation or a negotiation to get people to spend the time as necessary to do it. But you absolutely have to do, with all of this stuff, you just have to, there are always 3 components to everything, and that's software development, hardware development, and wetware development. And a wetware developer is a trainer. That's what we call wetware developer. It's a wetware developer. You're developing between the ears. And so you want to, you have the hardware and you have the software to make all this stuff work, but you have to have the wetware solved. And so sending out great training, sending out great videos, sending out support, being ready for that is just as important a component as picking the right tools. Go ahead, Sky.
HR, I heard recently started using the phrase hard skills and soft skills. And the hard skills are the technical, and the soft skills are, can you get along and play with others?
And ours is a more general thing, because wetware is really more of the hard skills. It's like it's training people to be able to understand what that is. And we can talk about that for hours. For me, the example I always use is that I have a microwave that they spent millions of dollars on with all these crazy little things, and all I know how to do is power and time, because they didn't spend enough on training. So there's not videos. Every time I plug something in, it says, go check the manual. I'm like, really? Like I have to go find a manual for something that's been here for 10 years, because you won't tell me, like there should be a video about how to do that. And then I'd probably use it, and then I'd be more attached. Then when I go to buy another microwave, I go buy the same microwave because now I know it. And so when people don't do
US
that.
military, and in the machine rooms, in the mechanics, they would have cartoon books of how to fix a thing, because that's how they were communicating to the soldiers that learn to fix things.
Training projects in the military can just the training for something can be hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yes,
just to build the training.
But they were using black and white cartoon books
to
get you to learn how to do something.
Now they're using VR. Next question.
Next question is from Jonas. Would it be recommended to bounce the light of the wall behind the camera to have it be more indirect?
We've definitely done that. If it just depends on the color of the wall. If the wall's red and you bounce it, it'll have a different flavor than what you expected. But yeah, if it has a white one, we've absolutely used that as a wide shot there. Yeah.
Photo of
absolutely.
Joseph yesterday was awesome, by the way. His backdrop.
Yeah, awesome. It's good. Well designed. Yep. Next question.
Next one's from Jeff Dooley. He asked, with returning remote kits versus not, are we worried about sales tax?
Well, you have to charge. The sales tax is going to come from somewhere, So if you're buying it, if you buy it all, then you're technically, I don't know how that works, but generally we're buying. Someone's buying it. Someone paid sales tax on it to get it there. I mean, unless you're using if you're using a retailer wholesale purchase, then that gets complicated. I mean, somebody's got to pay sales tax somewhere. I mean, that's usually the thing. Next question.
Next one's from Dick in Chicago. He says, do you find people already have one of your kits from a previous event? Does the client reuse the previous one?
Yeah. So if we have people that we've sent them before, we usually just check up and make sure that they still have all the pieces, but we don't charge them for it if they already have one. And the hard part is that a lot of the kits don't stay together. So people start using them for different things, and before you know it, they don't know where pieces are, and so that's the part of filling it in. And then we've also upgraded people's kits. If we have someone that's come in and we've changed the way we do the kits, we'll send them just the new pieces, to improve their kit so that they look like everybody else. We always want to try to keep everybody on a similar playing field. Next question. Oh, you're muted, guy.
Oh, sorry. Michael in Chicago asks, has anyone experienced low overall output from Focusrite preamps?
Oh yeah, they're kind of a nightmare for us. Like we try to avoid them. I think Focusrite drives us a little nuts. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. On the what do you call this? Scarlett line, which is their more entry level line of preamps. Definitely, they have very very little clean gain on them. But definitely on their higher end preamps, because Focusrite goes all the way back and to Neve. They're related to Neve preamps. So on their higher end preamps, it's really good. So I would say the lack of gain, the lack of gain is on the entry level products.
Next question.
Next one is from Alan, and he asks, is there anything like the Mac app webcam settings for Windows to control Logitech webcams? The Windows Logitech apps are not very granular, and I find I can access better camera control and proc amp settings by using OBS, but that's a big lift for remote participants.
We've had trouble with PCs of being able to control stuff over the PC side. I can't say that we've been super successful at it. For whatever reason, the UVC controls, people have given us a couple of them, and we just found them to be wonky. So I don't have anything that I can recommend. Oddly enough, we don't deal with, for whatever reason, for the events that we do, I think probably it's PC users are probably less than 25%, maybe even lower of our users are on PCs. And it just may be the type of events that we end up in or the type of clientele, but we just don't have a lot of PCs. And with those ones, we go, well, we'll see how they do, because we just have a lot of trouble controlling the cameras. Again, this is where I think a Zoom tool could be useful, to be able to get with a UVC control. Next question.
All right, next one. Hey, Mickey, I wanted you to hear this. This is noise assist at -20 and then 0. Now the kids aren't making noise, but I've had it on for the last couple questions. So 0. -20.
Yeah, it's
interesting.
Now they're being quiet.
I'm surprised at how natural it is at -20, because I've never turned it that high. Usually I'm at 5 or 6.
It seems to work relatively okay on that mic.
Yeah, and the -20, I've had it on since 8 o'clock. So there might be a shift. I'll go back and listen to the YouTube.
There's been very little.
So
very little sound.
So last question on Jason Panks is remote inexpensive audio kit, USB adapter, mic, earbud, hopefully via Amazon.
And I outlined that a little earlier, but I'll just repeat it. It is the Pulson, which you can only, Pulson or Pile, but the Pulson we think it sounds a little bit better. You can only get that on B&H. TechRise for the interface for that. You want the Pulson or the one that goes to the 1/8" jack, non-Sennheiser. The Sennheiser will not allow the 1/8" jack to go all the way in if you don't have a receiver that can handle it. So then you'll have other issues. So a non-Sennheiser, 1/8" jack in, TechRise connector, and then some kind of headphone. We use Autos, but there's other headphones that can be used. Go ahead, Sky.
Completely separate question, not audio or any of this. We got permission from the husband to mount rails and put things in the ceiling.
Cool.
So
can't wait to see it.
I can't wait to figure it out because I need. So thank you again, and the journey continues.
Yep, absolutely.
Baby steps, baby steps.
Okay, everybody, we're running a little heavy right now, so we're going to let you all go. Thank you all for coming and hanging out with us once again. And reminder that we're talking about education tomorrow. So education is the second hour tomorrow. It's a great conversation. We get a ton of, you watch like part of the, a third of the panelists go away, and then the heavy duty educators come in and start to, answer questions. And there's administrators and teachers and all kinds of other things that are there. So if you're interested in e-learning education and what's going on in that space and talking about solutions, it's a really great hour. So I would highly recommend it. And that'll be the second hour for tomorrow. Go ahead, Tony, real quick.
Alex, I just wanted to make an appeal to some of our panelists who typically leave when the educators come on, that if you can, stay around because we need you to support the education efforts. So please consider that. Thanks, guys.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So thank you, everybody. And we will see you all tomorrow. And have a great day, great evening, great night, wherever you are.